When students come to their first supervision meeting with me, they're often convinced that they're on the right track. They read quite a bit, they scribbled a lot, and had a go at writing their title. But within minutes, one thing becomes clear. They haven't progressed enough. They're not behind on writing though, they're behind on direction. Or in other words, they have no idea what their dissertation is really about. In this video, I'll take you inside my first meeting with students and show you how we can fix the real issue behind slow starts. And the shift to clarity often happens within one meeting. So if you want to know how you can move from vague ideas to clarity, watch until the end. I've used the method I'll explain in this video countless times over the years, and most recently in 4 back-to-back supervision meetings that inspired this video. Each student came in with their initial idea and even had a working title, but what they were missing was clarity about the theoretical angle, which is the single most important element in any dissertation. So in the next few minutes, I'll walk you through the exact 3-step process I used in that first meeting to help students build clarity fast. And I'll show you how we shift from uncertainty and hesitation to a focused academic lens that drives the research. This involves clarifying the dissertation's theoretical and context focus, identifying the real topic of your dissertation, and setting up a smart and targeted literature review. And at the end, I'll explain why theory matters more than context. Let's begin by untangling the 2 things most students confuse: theory and context. One of the key messages I want students to understand from this first meeting is that the dissertation should center on a theoretical lens rather than a contextual focus. And this requires helping students to clarify what we mean by theory and context. Scientific research is always framed by theoretical perspectives, or in other words, the lens used, which dictates how the object, with its multiple context features, is studied. So what is theory? Theory is a framework or set of principles that guide your observations of the context. The simple way of describing theory is to view it as a lens, the lens with which you are going to look at the context or the object of study. For example, in organizational studies, strategic planning and organizational improvisation offer distinct perspectives on organizational activity, and this influences how researchers approach the study of how organizations interact with the external environment. The strategic planning approach argues that organizations should always act after thorough planning, while organizational improvisation assumes that sometimes organizations should act by improvising. And what is context? Simply put, context is the object of study, the object you are going to make observations about. In a dissertation, the object has more than one context element. For example, the group of people you are researching and the behavior, technology, or product you are interested in. I actually explain context in more detail in one of the first videos in the YouTube channel. It's the Avoid the Number One Mistake video. While theory and context are interconnected, their roles are fundamentally different. Theory serves as a lens through which you examine the object, while context provides the specific details of that object. And without an overarching theoretical framework, your research risks becoming an isolated collection of observations about the topic rather than a coherent intellectual inquiry. Having explained the difference between theory and context, let's look at how I help students clarify what in their title is theory and what is context. I will explain this and the next 2 steps by resorting to the draft title of one of the students I met at the beginning of the process. Let's call her Lara, and she gave me permission to use this as a case study in this video. And her initial title was The Role of Social Media Marketing in Enhancing Audience Engagement at Contemporary Music Festivals. The first task I carry out with students when they bring their working title is to classify the key areas in the title as a theory or context. And in Lara's case, the first area that needed classification was social media marketing, which is an example of context. So we highlight in yellow. And then we've got audience, which is also context. Then we have engagement, which is actually theory. And then we have contemporary music festivals, which as a type of product, it is context. So from the working title, we have one word that is about theory, which is good. And in this instance, engagement, or more specifically, online engagement, because we are talking about the online world. This exercise is really useful because it allows me to correct any misinterpretations and clarify the meaning of theory and context. Now, I've got a task for you. Using your draft title, clarify the theory and context elements in it. And you don't need to be at the beginning of your dissertation to complete this task. No matter the stage, if you feel you haven't clarified your theoretical focus and elements of your context with 100% certainty, you should also complete this task. It's never too late to clarify them. If you're enjoying this video, please press the like button, and if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. And don't forget to join the free Literature Review Masterclass to level up your literature review skills. Details are in the description below. Now that we've clarified theory versus context, the next question becomes, what is the real topic in the working title? Once I complete step 1, I ask the student the following question. In 1 or 2 words, what is your research about? And the answer must be in the title. This is a really important question because the answer tells me 2 things. First, if the student is able to identify the central area of the dissertation, and 2, if they are approaching the dissertation from the right angle, the theoretical angle. Believe it or not, many students get this question wrong, with many answering using context elements. If we go back to Lara's example, when I asked the question, she first answered social media marketing, and when I said that this is not the best answer because it's context, she said music festivals. And this is not the best answer too because it is also context. I eventually explained that the right answer is engagement. And this is because you should always approach your research from the theory perspective. And engagement is a chosen theoretical lens. I also performed the no context test, which is an elimination exercise where students are asked to remove all the context elements from the working title. By stripping out the context, Lara confirmed that the meaning that was left was engagement, the theoretical angle. And what is the theoretical lens you are using in your dissertation? Drop it in the comments and I will reply to as many as I can. So far, we've looked at how to separate theory from context, and from this, how to clarify your real topic. If you would like tailored help to apply these steps to your dissertation, I now offer one-to-one support. Go to www.dissertation.academy for more details. Once the real topic of the research is clear, the student is ready to carry out a more targeted literature review. And we naturally move on to discuss step 3. Rather than reading aimlessly, I encourage my students to focus their literature review on theory first, which is helped if they successfully completed stages 1 and 2. My advice here depends on where the student is with clarifying their theoretical focus. In Lara's case, because her title contains a suitable theoretical perspective, which she is now fully aware of, I encouraged her to thoroughly explore the concept of engagement before progressing further. In practice, this means carrying out the theoretical review of the concept. This is a fairly targeted literature review because she now knows what the scope of her literature review is, review the literature on engagement, and what her ultimate goal is, to become an expert in the psychology and practice of engagement, notably online engagement. At this stage, I introduce the student to the following approach to the literature review. First, start by defining key concepts to set boundaries. If we take the example of the working title we've been using in this video, I encourage the student to first focus on defining the concept of engagement, and more specifically, online engagement. Second, I recommend the student to conduct a focused literature review on the chosen theory, in this instance engagement, using the structured method of literature analysis. In this method, instead of drafting full chapters early, I ask students to analyze 5 relevant papers and send structured notes to me for feedback. Once they get feedback, they correct their technique and analyze more papers, which they can also send to me for comment. This practice means that the students can develop their analysis skills incrementally. And if you want to know more about reviewing the literature, including the structured approach to literature analysis, check out the many videos on this channel about the topic. As I said at the beginning of this video, the first meeting focuses on helping students understand that their main concern should be on the theoretical lens rather than context. And why is this theory focus so important? There are 4 important reasons why your efforts should be centered on the theory part of your dissertation. Theory defines the research focus, theory dictates methodology, theory ensures academic rigor, and theory reduces the risk of bias and predetermined conclusions. In this video, I will emphasize 2 of these, the first and the fourth. A more complete explanation of these 4 reasons, as well as more examples where I apply the 3-step process, feature in the virtual tutor resource. Details about the resource are in the description below. One of the reasons why the focus on theory is so important is because theory defines the research focus. Research framed around context alone naturally becomes too broad and unfocused, because it will be difficult to develop precise and meaningful research questions. For example, if we take Lara's working title, if you focus on the context elements of music festivals or social media marketing, your literature review would never end, because you would have to cover everything within these contexts. Imagine having to review all the research on social media marketing. This includes research on segmentation, positioning, product, price, distribution, promotion, and so on. It's just impossible. In contrast, theoretical concepts provide clarity on what is being investigated. By defining a clear theoretical perspective, the scope becomes manageable, helping refine key research questions and objectives. In this instance, you would review the literature on engagement, which is a much more targeted area. Another reason why theory is so important is that theory reduces the risk of bias and predetermined conclusions. Students sometimes approach research with preconceived answers they want to prove, rather than allowing theory to guide findings. Without the theoretical grounding, research becomes more like an advocacy piece rather than a personally detached investigation. Consequently, theory encourages unexpected insights. When you focus on theory, you are more likely to park your preconceptions about what should be happening in the context of your study, and by remaining open to all potential findings, you are more likely to uncover insights you may not have considered. If you want to know more about literature analysis, you will like to watch this video, and YouTube thinks you will like this one. Thank you for watching.